to a story where I'd hoped we wouldn't be reading an introduction to an interview like this ever again, but another school pupil has lost her life through pit toilets. A 4-year-old learner in the Eastern Cape was discovered in the school's pit toilet after failing to return home on Monday. She's just one of many who've perished in similar circumstances. In 2021, Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga launched a sanitation appropriate for education program aimed at eradicating pit toilets altogether. But the issue persists. Amnesty International South Africa is calling on government to urgently deal with the issues. And I'm joined virtually by Mienke Steytle from the organization, a spokesperson for Amnesty International South Africa. Mienke, another child has lost her life because of pit toilets and our government's inability to provide basic services to our most vulnerable. A reaction from Amnesty International, please.
It's absolutely devastating. When we heard this yesterday, we could not believe what we were hearing. Also because all these plans have been put in place, and yet there isn't a transparent, communication of how these plans are going. How the government is going about this. And another child has lost her life, and we really urgently call on the government to publicly communicate and transparently communicate what the progress is, how many pit toilets are left in schools. And when we say this, we mean the plain pit toilets, the ones that are unventilated, unsafe, unsanitary. We do need to say, however, that of course the police are investigating exactly how this little girl ended up in the pit toilet. But for us, it still stays. It's a pit toilet is dangerous, and it shouldn't have been there in the first place. And this just really, hopefully will be a wake-up call to government that they have to take urgent action.
What did we know about this specific incident involving this 4-year-old girl who went missing and then was discovered in this pit toilet?
Yes, so at this stage, what we know is that, is what you said in your introduction as well, is that her mother went to look for her at the school. The police were asked to help, and she was found in this pit toilet. And for us as well, it was a week ago, literally a week ago to the day, was yet another deadline that the DBE had said, the Department of Basic Education had said that all plain pit toilets would be eradicated in schools in South Africa. Minister Motshekga said that herself in Parliament last year. And she said that it would be at the end of the financial year. And the financial year came and went on the 28th of February. And yet there's been no update from them. And we wrote to them a couple of weeks ago. We have still had no reply. And then we get this statement from the police saying that they have found this little girl's body in a pit toilet. And we just could not believe what we were reading. It's totally unacceptable. No child should lose her or his life for the shortfalls of government.
And one doesn't even want to think about how horrible a death it would have been, specifically for a little girl of that age and of that size. I just went online now just to look at what the latest was with regards to what was reported on with the Basic Education Department's plan, so-called plan, to rid the country of these awful things. And it was reported online in March of 2022, the 5th of March 2022. So nicely almost a year. And that headline was that Basic Education Department has again pushed back the deadline for the eradication of pit toilets at schools. But I do think that pushback was then to be at the end of the 2022-23 financial year. Like you said, that's come and gone. We're a few weeks into that. And at the time, it was based on the Basic Education Minister answering questions with regards to pit toilets. And she said that provincial departments had identified 3,898 schools at the start of the Sanitation Appropriate for Education initiative. They even gave it a nice little abbreviation. It was called the SAFE initiative. And she said that there were presently 2,814 schools on the SAFE program, and the upgrading of sanitation has been completed at 1,564 schools. And she said here, and I quote, the balance of the schools is scheduled to be completed by the end of 2022-2023. She did then go on to say they wanted to give certain provinces time to let them know if there were additional schools or additional institutions they were finding out where pit toilets were. So one can understand that this is a massive operation. But that was reported on a year ago. And here we have another little lifeless body found in the pit of the most awful circumstances.
Exactly, and this is the thing that we have is these deadlines that keep moving. Also, even the inconsistency, the figures you gave, we find that they have the SAFE initiative, but they have another initiative called ACD as well, and we are just seeing different figures. And for example, the annual report has been published, but their report that looks in detail at infrastructure at schools has not been published yet. And so there's this inconsistency of data. And you also mentioned, the regulations. They proposed amendments to the regulations last year. Amnesty International did a submission to this. One of the points was they wanted to remove all sign of deadlines, and we asked that deadlines are still part of the plan, because it's only then really that accountability can become a reality, right? There is a deadline. We have had radio silence on that ever since, and that is just really worrying. And like you said, and now there has been another lifeless body, another family devastated. I mean, the devastation of losing a child like that must just be, it's just even unimaginable.
Yeah, and unimaginable, and we can't put words to it. About the SAFE program, Mienke, do you know how they went about instituting the SAFE program? It went about obviously gathering information. What then, according to the SAFE program, would happen next?
So what they've told us in the past, and we do like to engage, and like you also rightly mentioned, this is a huge job. So that must be acknowledged. We all know that nothing is as easy as said as done, right? So and especially in schools that are very rural, where there is maybe no piping, there has to be plans made. We've read also that these more souped up pit toilets that are called ventilated pit toilets, they cost quite a lot of money. What we understood is that they always tell us that it's the job of the local education department, it's the job of the local municipality that has to take responsibility, that they give the funds, and then it has to be carried out by the local municipality, and that's how we understand that how these infrastructure programs of theirs work. However, we still say that ultimately the buck stops with them, right? The buck stops with national government as well. I mean, if you and I were not delivering on our jobs, we would be asked why we're not delivering on our jobs. And ultimately, the buck stops with our bosses as well. If we were not delivering, our bosses would also be asked, well, why is your staff, why are your employees not delivering? So for me, I feel like they pass the buck, and there's radio silence, and there's moving of goalposts, and this really impacts for us as Amnesty International on the human rights of learners, the right to quality education, the right to dignity, the right to sanitation, and in this case, potentially, as I said, we are waiting for the police report, but potentially the right to life. That this little girl lost her life and ended up in a pit toilet, and ultimately the government is then, sad to say, failing on really providing basic human rights to people in South Africa, to learners in South Africa, our young people, our vulnerable children.
Totally unacceptable. Thank you so much, Mienke Steytle, spokesperson for Amnesty International South Africa. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you to the work that your organization does, who has repeatedly kept on this issue around pit toilets and kept it in the public eye.